All right, Max, and anyone else that's watching this, as you know, I love graphic novels. I also have an ambitious goal of trying to read a graphic novel that tells about the history or connection for major events for every country on the planet. So I'd love to read a graphic novel over time that gives a sense of what that country is really like or makes you feel an understanding or connection to that country without necessarily having been there. And I love to read authors that tell a part of their own story, even if they leave that country, that gives you a sense of a part of history there and the people and the culture. So my goal here is to record videos of these because it's easy to forget things over time. The book I was going to do today, this is a great one, The Best We Could Do. This is by Thi Bui, and I'll run through, I don't know how to work YouTube or any of the video stuff, but I've created my own bespoke scoring system, so I'll walk through that, which is right here. So I have 5 categories: characters, art, history, readability, and X factor. First thing is the character score. I gave this a 7 out of 10. This story really focuses on the immigrant's journey and her trying to understand her parents better, who both were alive during the Vietnam War, and from that, in the fallout, decided to move to the U.S. Their story is really interesting. You get to see both how their parents grew up, how they knew each other, and also the struggles they had. Some of the, without spoiling too much of the story, obviously there's a lot of hardships. This is giving a sense of just how much of the book is infused with these characters, the Ma and Pa, who's Ma and Ba in the story, and then the 6 children that are involved as well. You get a sense, really the family is the mechanism for telling the history of their experience with Vietnam and the Vietnam War. And so that's really central to it. I loved all of the descriptions, particularly around the mother and father, and you could see allusions to how she saw herself in those characters, especially as she aged. So I really like the characters. I already showed a little bit of what the art looks like, but I'll try to find some other examples here. The entire graphic novel is broken into 10 chapters, I believe, and you see like this page in particular. This is a good example of the type of art that's in this graphic novel. It's exclusively in reds, blacks, and whites, which I've seen in other graphic novels, one that I'll have to review later about Spain, but that'll be for another video. But I love how the art looks in general. I gave that a 7 out of 10 score. And I thought it made a lot of things pop. It also drew a lot of contrast to some of the characters as well. In terms of the history, I mean, this book is really one of the reasons I have read this now twice. I think it just did such a good job at highlighting the challenges of communism rolling into the country, as well as the complexities of Vietnam dealing with their relationship with the French, which was quite complicated. A large part of some of their conflicts was because of how the French decided after World War II to re-engage with Vietnam. So another example page there. Really gives a really, really in-depth perspective on what it was like as a family unit to have to, as children, deal with a lot of hardships through various pre-Vietnam War struggles, and then try to have births and a growing family dealing with the Vietnam War actively. The author, I believe, was, maybe 3 years old or something by the time they reached America, so was going through quite a lot of the war during the book. And so I think in terms of the history, it gets an 8 out of 10. Some graphic novels focused in like a biopic type perspective, I don't think necessarily draw on as much of concrete events that you leave feeling like you learned something new, but I definitely was and still not really a Vietnam War buff, but I felt like I learned a lot from this. In terms of readability, I think I already said that I've already reread this once. as my computer decides to freeze. Wow, I didn't know it did that. Oh, because it's probably on like a 5-minute timer, huh? I'll have to see what that looks like. Might have to cut that part of the video out because my computer decided to freeze up there for a second. Yeah, in terms of rereadability, such a rereadable book. I reread it twice in the last couple months. It was at my local library. I think there's something about just the way that the text flows. You get so into the characters and their struggles, trying to survive, make money, deal with a growing family, make hard decisions with a lot of uncertainty during the war and the conflicts and thereafter. So I found it incredibly easy to read. The lowest score I had on this was the X Factor score, which is not super well defined, but I think some graphic novels that have connections to particular countries that I'll hopefully review later have a much more magical or mystical or some kind of creative element that they weave into the story. This did an incredibly good job for the author to connect with their own family, their own roots, say things that probably would be difficult for them to say in person, and very much is a love story, I think, of them understanding their own journey and particularly their mother and father through a lot of very trying times during the war period. So really love the book, but yeah, I don't think there was a single moment that like totally blew me away in terms of, wow, I feel like I've never read this type of scene in a graphic novel before. So a little bit lower on the X Factor score, but overall I gave, by weighting these scores together, I'm giving the best we could do, a 6.8, which is very, very good. This is my first sort of attempt using this metric for scoring these novels, but this is a lovely book. It clearly it touches on so many cool themes about immigration, about war, classism, and pretty much everything for dealing with family, particularly bookended by being a mother and giving birth to her first child as the book begins, and some really powerful endings connected to being a mother and understanding your own mother through the experience. So tons of great stuff about war, about Vietnam, complicated relationship with other countries and communism, and highly suggest. So great book. I'll end it here.